Hello, my loves. How are you? There's been quite a bit of information and energy coming in. So I've been guided to actually just sort of share the energies that have been coming through. There's been quite a bit of intense emotions, but also accompanied with physical energies that have been also accompanying that. Some of the emotions that have been coming through this I know that, like I said in my most recent video, that both the masculine and feminine collectives are feeling this. But what's been coming through is that there is heavily an energy within the masculine collective that's also being worked on within the feminine system as well. But it does feel heavily guided towards the masculine collective. And what's been coming through is there is quite a bit of physical like pains, aches, tension coming up in the body. Some of the main areas that have been coming through are like the head, neck, jaw, and like very prominently the teeth, which was fascinating, but that felt very much connected to words withheld, communication withheld, like holding back their own truth. And there's also this deeper sense that they were holding back their own truth from themselves, sort of like they haven't, or they're being pushed into having to look at their own truth or what really is true for them in a deeper way. And that is actually bringing up quite a bit of intense anxiety, some frustration, some agitation. There was some energies almost of like those like PTSD, OCD types of energies. I think I connected on this like a week or two ago over on a Patreon video. And I've been meaning to speak about it here, but it's like there's been so much things happening. It's finally just landing that this is gonna be going on. It appears to be for a bit as the masculines are really being divinely pushed into their next levels. Ultimately, we know that this is going to be a positive thing, but it can be very intense. What it feels like to me is sort of like all of the things that were squished down or ignored or frozen are really thawing and coming to the surface. I've also been picking up on quite a bit of shock energy, frozen energy, and some dissociation energy. This has been coming in, like I said, for a few weeks. It's part of why I was guided to do the safe group. And we had a really beautiful group last night. There was lots of intense resolving and clearing. And there's another one today at 3 p.m. if you're interested in that. If you're feeling any of these energies and would just like some support, you're more than welcome. But yes, it's really the reason those all kind of coincided was that with those solar flares, it seemed to really bring everything to the surface. And as it gets deeper into the layers, it's really hitting those base chakras, the root chakra, and getting down into the fears, hence hitting like those anxieties and the PTSD and the frustration. And hold on, I wasn't even sure what I was going to talk about today because there was so much coming through, but I can feel that there's this energy of like where everything's sort of cloudy. It's like everything coming up to the surface at once and it feels very overwhelming, very cloudy, almost confusing. But it does feel like there's also clarity coming in with it. And though also even some of the clarity is sort of triggering more emotion or more frustration. It feels like the reason the fear is coming up and the anxiety and that general energy of feeling unsafe is not necessarily because there's anything occurring in this moment that's necessarily unsafe. But what I'm sensing and picking up on is where people have shut down, the masculines in particular, but some feminines, I'm sure as well. I've done this before and found it in my own system, is where we froze off or protected ourselves and moved into a protective mechanism in order to feel safer, right? Or because we just didn't have the tools or the bandwidth to deal with the things that were occurring. And so, in order to feel safe and stable, we sort of froze off, walled off, ran away, whatever have you. But because this part of the collective is not actually in a dangerous situation, at least with the energies I'm picking up on, it's a safe space for these energies to come up and to be processed in an appropriate type of way. But it's still bringing all of those to the surface. And what I encourage people to do when they're in this type of situation, obviously, if you're not in legitimate danger, is like sitting with yourself, giving yourself space. That if you need time to yourself to let your nervous system heal and reacclimate, that's okay. That's different than freezing and walling. The freezing and walling and running generally is where we shut it down or shut it down in the past and then ignored it. Like didn't look at it, didn't work with it, didn't try to heal it, didn't try to communicate about it, just shut it down, pretended it didn't exist, and then like moved on with our life, right? Got in another relationship, focused on work, drank, ate, partied, whatever, I over exercised, whatever it was that we may have done to skirt actually dealing with the underlying issues. This is sort of a totally different way. Those were like more of distractions and dissociations, where this is like taking a step back, taking space for yourself, and like really honoring where your nervous system is. Like I said, if you're not in legitimate danger, which I think most of you are not, then you literally sit and like reparent that part of yourself, talk to yourself, give yourself the space and grace to sort of unpack or unravel or clear out all of the old information that's coming up in your system and creating the anxiety and the fear and the discomfort. Because whatever is most likely triggering you in this moment or coming up in the recent past, what's happening is it's opening up and bringing to the surface all the unprocessed information from the past that you just squished down or froze out. One of my favorite things that I use that can be helpful is called Rescue Remedy. And I know a bunch of you guys have already probably used it or are aware of it, but just in case any of you are not, it's just a homeopathic, natural, they're called Bach flower remedies. And they're just flower essences that actually support the nervous system in thawing out shock and kind of being able to anxiety and just being able to be more present. It just takes like the edge off. I'll drop that in the pin comment for you guys as well. But it can be very helpful. It's subtle, but it can be very helpful for times like this because mostly why I'm really feeling guided to hit this home about this topic is that it does feel that a lot of what is coming up is a lot of past stuff. So it can feel exceedingly overwhelming when you're attempting to deal with one thing, but you have like 20 or 30 topics coming up, all like in a big giant hairball. And that is where the work that I do comes in and we unravel and dissolve and kind of reorganize. But you guys can also obviously do that in whatever way you're needing to, but it also feels exceedingly important to realize that the people in the collective that aren't necessarily aware of these things, they're experiencing the emotions and the pressure, and they may not understand why. Okay. Just over the weekend, I was out and about and ran a few errands, and I could tell that people were much more on edge than normal, especially the people that were working. Not so much the people that were out like shopping and running errands, but the people that were working seemed to be very on edge. So I just was observing that just in the general collective, people are really feeling the push. I did have some other energies come in very recently, around some insights of why many of the sacred feminines have been alone and really being called to her highest timeline. And I didn't know I was going to go into this right now, but I guess it's just relative to everything that's happening in a whole different type of way. But many of the feminines have worked deeply on these energies. And not that we're not still working on residuals, of course we are, but we have sort of a handle on those bigger dark night of the soul energies. And so even when you're feeling them or they're coming up in your system, you're able to handle those and understand the process. And although it can be uncomfortable and frustrating sometimes, you kind of are gaining that momentum of understanding this is the ascension process that we're moving through. And so, what I was being shown and downloaded, especially over the last few weeks, was that in the past energies and the old dynamics, many of the feminine's voice was not heard or respected or appreciated for what she brings to the table with her vision. And the feminines do have a unique vision or a unique way of sharing energy, as the masculines do. But in the old way that our society was set up, it wasn't necessarily conducive to allowing a feminine to share her feminine essences and her vision in her feminine way. It was more acceptable if she went into her masculine energy to try to accomplish what she was wanting. This isn't about pointing fingers. This just is, in general, what we were just living in. It's just how the programming was in most cases, generally. But what is happening is many of the feminines, I see it obviously within our collective, but if you really start to look, this is happening on a planetary scale. Even the feminines that aren't into the things that we're doing, they're experiencing this shift into their own energy and power. And this is actually a very, very important process that's happening because what it's doing is allowing the feminines to fully step into their true energy and power. And this space has been divinely orchestrated and created for the sacred feminines because it's giving the feminines the opportunity to fully ground, stabilize, and align her vision, her thoughts and her lane for her life, but also the planetary energies and how she's going to participate and share her gifts in reciprocity with the masculines. Okay. So the feminines moving into their power and sovereignty and grounding and stabilizing her vision is a very important part of our evolution, of our ascension into those more harmonious union energies, the unity consciousness. It's an important half of the puzzle, so to speak, right? So as you're moving into your internal union energies, you're holding that safe space and container for yourself and your internal masculine energies, holding a safe space for your feminine energies, your intuitive, creative, flowing energies to feel safe, to stabilize and ground and bring forth your creations and your service and your artistry or your voice, whatever it is that you're bringing. And this is a very different essence when it's coming from this sacred feminine essence, because it's not coming from a tug of war, masculine versus feminine ideals. This is coming from an internally balanced energy within a feminine essence. Okay, so it has that harmonious energy, but it's being expressed in a feminine essence, which is just so important for where we are and where we're headed, and for all of us to experience the support of the sacred feminine essences. As we're also all craving the sacred masculine essences, we're craving those sacred feminine essences. And so many of the feminines, like I said, are being called to more deeply stabilize into that balance and into her sacred feminine essences. And while this is happening with the feminine collectives, like I've said, the masculines are now being relieved of their duty, staying in the karmic codependent energies, hence why they're starting to feel and unravel the things that were keeping them trapped and stuck in some of those energies. As the feminines ground and stabilize, the masculines are then able to go through their deeper dark night of the soul and clearing process, so they have the space to rise into their truth and their vision. And this is important because I believe that the masculines have wanted to hold space for the feminines, but the level and energy that the feminines are actually capable of holding, the masculines were not raised or prepared to hold that capacity. But this is what they're going through the process of being able to do for themselves first. And then they'll be able to circle back around and hold space for the sacred feminines in a deeper way. And this is where that reciprocity is happening. They were holding space as the feminines went through their transformation. And now the feminines are essentially doing the same. Well, all she really has to do is continue to ground in and stabilize in her own inner union, in her own lane, following her vision. Okay. And I've had some conversations with many of you, especially, well, both masculine and feminine, to be completely honest and open, where you've had that vision and that inspiration of where you saw yourself with your counterpart, like building a life together. And then you reach certain points and they're not present or available. And what I've been shown and told is because this is why. Because if you were to meet up in those moments, you might not actually fully actualize your own power as a feminine or a masculine. But as you are giving yourself space, and like I said, nothing has to be perfect. But if it's not in alignment just yet, because there's more growth and expansion that's available to you being in your own lane for a bit longer, just keep following your guidance, keep building your bricks and planting your seeds and following your specific guidance and surrendering to the higher power of whatever is meant for you is going to meet you on that timeline, right, loves? Okay, this is why the feminines are stabilizing into that highest alignment so deeply, because she's moving into that again. That's actually acting as a natural beacon for the masculine collective as they move through their parts. All right, I was guided to pull out that Healing Waters Oracle deck, that newer deck that I got a few weeks ago. I just want to bring in a message of support. Wow. Okay, when I shuffled earlier, this was the card that came up, and it just came up again. The Mist. Trust your inner compass, be led from within. I'm going to read from the book. Of course, we always talk about being led from within. Where are you? Intuition is pointless unless we act on it, but it rarely makes logical sense, which is why it takes faith to trust it and courage to act on it. But when we do gather up the will to act on our intuition, each and every day we'll find ourselves living a true blessing, deeply aligned life that's led from within. I call it living a soul-led life. There's a golden thread before you, calling you toward it, beckoning you forth. You're being called to trust your inner compass and be led from within. Mist and fog form when it's extremely humid and water vapor condenses to form droplets that hang in the air. When mist or fog set in, it's as if everything's hanging in a state of mystery. When we're walking in mist, we make sure we're facing the right way, slow down and enter a state of trust. Following your intuition is similar to that. While you may not know every step along the way or the exact destination, you're called to trust your inner compass. to trust that the path will appear before you and for you, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, following the yellow brick road. We're all being led home to ourselves and our soul's path. It just requires us to consistently trust the guidance system within. This is so strong with some of the energies that were coming up, and I'm glad that it came through, connected back to the beginning of this message, because it feels like a lot of the frustration and emotion that the masculines are experiencing is connected to the fact that they made the logical moves and the logical decisions. They oftentimes ignored their intuition or what their heart really wanted, to go for the things that were more readily, easily available or stable, or allowed them to feel in their own comfort zone, the things that seemed more logical, like this said. But that is all sort of opening up and unraveling, was what I was picking up on. So I'm going to dive deeper into those energies in a Patreon reading, and I'm going to post that in a little bit. And I'm going to dive into supports for the masculines that are going through all of these emotional processes, as well as getting more messages for the feminines connected with her purpose. And I might do that in 2 videos as I'm talking that out. We'll see how it plays out, but I will be coming out with some more messages around those subjects, because they feel like where we are right now and sort of where we might be in that kind of lane for a little bit. Not stagnant, but just sort of working with these processes. All right, loves. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And of course, I would love to hear from you as always. Take care. Bye.